Good evening, Georgia. It's great to be with you guys today. It's always a pleasure to make a trip down here to the great state of Georgia. You know, in a recent survey, 74% of Americans believe America is headed in the wrong direction. 74%. Now, in just a few short days, this state, along with other states throughout our country, will be making a critical decision on the future of our nation. And today I want to focus on what I believe was one of the most important things facing our nation, and that's restoring the American dream. I believe that's been lost. Um, I think we this country needs to restore that so badly. You know, when I was growing up, we had a president by the name of Ronald Reagan. And in his 8 years in the White House, Reagan brought back a sense of pride in our nation. He brought back a sense of patriotism this country needed badly. The nation at the time had high unemployment, high gas prices, the Iranian hostage crisis. Does all of that sound familiar? Excuse me. You know, it's in the headlines today. Not the Iranian hostage crisis, but high gas prices, crisis overseas, high unemployment, high inflation. It's almost as if we're back in the 1980s again. What this nation needs is another Ronald Reagan. You know, during the last couple of years, many have called me a 2000s version of Ronald Reagan. And while I'm flattered by the comparison, and President Reagan and I share many of the same beliefs, there is only one Ronald Reagan. President Reagan often talked about patriotism. He felt it was important, as well as I do. A rebirth of our nation's patriotism starts in our schools. Our schools must return the pledge and prayer to schools and do it now. For it's this action of the pledge and prayer that is the basis upon which patriotism is born and created. You know, when I was in high school, I had a government teacher who instilled a sense of patriotism in our class, in our school. He taught you to believe in your government, in our government. And while he was of a different party, he never once pushed his agenda on his students. His name was Bill Hickey. Our nation needs more teachers like Bill Hickey. Georgia must elect leaders who do not endorse or support critical race theory. We must elect leaders that are against the liberal, progressive agenda of the Democratic Party. You know, Joe Biden claims he's for the American worker. Has claimed he's from Scranton and has always got the American workers back. Well, let's look at the record. Excuse me. Just in the past month, Ford has announced that 3,000 jobs will be eliminated as they prepare to manufacture electric vehicle. 3,000 labor jobs that he claims he supports were eliminated because of those policies. Does this sound like someone who supports the American worker? Let me be clear. I'm not against clean energy. I just don't think we are ready for a quick conversion overnight. I just don't think we're ready. I mean, if you look at the infrastructure it's going to take tremendous infrastructure. And look at the cost. There are some estimates that these electric vehicles are costing $60,000 to $70,000. Now, who can on a on an average income afford a $70,000 vehicle? Not many. You know, one of my favorite TV shows is West Wing. Remember that show? Rob Lowe played a character named Sam Seaborn. Sam talks about education in one episode, and I'm going to like to quote Sam in this today. Education is a silver bullet. Education is everything. We don't need little changes. We need gigantic, monumental changes. Schools should be palaces. Competition for the best teachers should be fierce. They should be making six-figure salaries. Schools should be incredibly expensive for government and free of charge to its citizens, just like national defense. Those words, just like national defense. Now, think about it. Our children that are in our schools today, they are our nation's national defense. For in our schools are our future leaders, our future doctors, our future astronauts, our future scientists. In our schools may be the person who cures cancer. In our schools may be the person who is curing other diseases that we don't even know about. That person will be the person behind curing those diseases. And because that person is curing these diseases, the reason he is curing these diseases is actually he got a good, solid education, and that begins in our public schools. You know, the Democratic Party of President Bartlett, who is the president owned West Wing, it's nothing like the Democratic Party of today. Nothing. Matter of fact, the politics today is nothing like it was depicted in that television show or even 30, 40 years ago. Today's party is endorsing a far left wing agenda, something this nation does not need. When it comes to government spending, the Democrats want more government and entitlements. I believe in less government and an end to social welfare. You know, during the past 2 years, our nation has experienced a pandemic not seen in many years. In fact, since the Spanish flu, many government assistance programs were put in place. They needed to be. We shut our economy down. In order for the economy to survive, we had to put these programs into place. But let's go forward 2 years, 2.5 years now. Our nation is seeing decreasing number of infections from COVID. Hospitalizations are going down. My fellow Americans, it is time for each and every able-bodied citizen in this country to return to work. You know, just the other day, I stopped by a local restaurant back home in Texas. As I went to open the door was locked. A sign simply said, closed for 1 hour due to staffing shortage. Another one, not far away from my home, has closed its doors. You know, and I wonder if the policies of these companies, these restaurants, contributed to their demise, to their downfall. You know, in our country, we got the free enterprise system, and you're responsible. You know, if your business is successful, you did a good job. If you weren't successful, something caused that. There's no reason why our restaurants should still be shuttered to people who are wanting to come in and be customers in that restaurant. There's no reason. Same thing with our schools. Our schools are still rebounding from the pandemic. The latest information available shows a drop in scores on the benchmark tests, which have just been completed for most of the students for the fall semester. A drop between 5 and 7% on math and reading nationwide. 5 and 7% on math and reading. We learned that during the pandemic, while remote learning, it was valuable during the early days of the pandemic. It does not have a place in today's classroom. Now, when it comes to times that we need to have remote learning, isolated times like a student's out for, let's say, extended period of time, in an isolated instance, I think that's okay, but not broad based, not across a district, not across a school. We've got to return to learning. There was a statistic that came out just last year that talks about the gap uh, that is going to be part of our nation's for our nation for a long time, the learning gap, and it measures a child from his kindergarten days all the way up until he retires. They predict there'll be a gap or a learning deficit that will last 70 years. 70 years. And that's just from articles that I've read about this. And that's alarming. We've got to work. We've got to do our very best to close that gap. Now, I know also um, there are people that are opposed to standardized testing. And I will say this on standardized testing. Um, I think it's important right now, given we're in the post pandemic days, because it's there, we can see the data of what we need to work on. There's some fantastic uh, applications out there, learning tools that students use all the time in classrooms, that they do things on computers and the teacher will get an immediate feedback on where they're at. And also these programs will actually produce custom made worksheets for the student. So not only are you assisting your class, but you're giving a student, little Johnny or little Susie, a custom made worksheet that addresses their needs. Little Susie's needs may be different from little Johnny's, but that's where we can use our technology. That's where the technology needs to be put in place in the classroom. The polarization we're seeing in our nation because of the pandemic and just because of other reasons, it must stop. We must learn to respect each other once again and each other's opinions. There's so much anger going on in our country, so much hatred, people just hating for no reason at all. It's time for all of this to stop. In our nation's 245-year history, we've accomplished great things during a national crisis. And I think we could all say that COVID was a national crisis, if not a worldwide crisis. Mankind's greatest achievement was accomplished during another crisis in our nation, the Vietnam War. The Apollo moon landing was accomplished. Mankind's greatest achievement was accomplished when this country was so divided over a war. But yet it came together and we put a man on the moon. We can come together and accomplish those great achievements once again only if we come together as a country. Let's start down that road by respecting one another again. Let's reach out to our brothers and sisters and shake their hands. I don't see enough of that anymore. I don't see that hardly at all. You know, my fellow Texan Tom Lee once said that him and his wife Sarah love to live on the east side of the mountain. It's the sunrise side, not the sunset side. It's a side to see the day coming, not to see the day that's gone. I believe, as Tom and Sarah do, it's time to look toward the day ahead, not the day that has passed. You know, in a few short days, we will make a critical decision on the future of this nation. My fellow Americans, I urge you, I urge you all to make the decision that's proper for you, that you see best for the future of this nation. May God bless you. May God bless our troops. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you all.